Hello, everybody. This is Jeff Halper, the director of ICAHD, the Israeli Committee Against House Demolitions, joining you for another monthly update or what's turning into more of a conversation. Uh, ICAHD, as you know, um, has always been a political organization. It's true we're the Israeli Committee Against House Demolitions, and we resist Israel's policy of demolishing Palestinian homes. Some 60,000 homes demolished in the occupied territory and inside Israel since 1967. But we've always seen the house demolition issue as a vehicle for understanding the bigger political picture. What are Israel's intentions? How does Israel enforce its colonization and apartheid? Of course, the human suffering of Palestinians is a part of this, and that's brought out as we record and document demolitions and the experiences of families. But at the same time, working on the demolition issue, rebuilding with Palestinian communities. We've built almost 200 houses as political acts of resistance over the last 20 some years. Working with Palestinian communities has given us the ability to work as political comrades together, not simply in resisting, but it's given us the credibility to work with our Palestinian partners in terms of thinking together. Where are we going? How do we get out of this situation? What is our political program? The great, I think, weakness, in a sense, of the Palestinian struggle is that there is today no political program. There's a vacuum. The two-state solution is gone. It never was, and we all know it never was, but it's gone. But no one is articulating an alternative. Certainly not the Palestinian Authority, uh, and uh, and so we're in a situation where we're in a political struggle without a political program, and you can't be reactive and at the same time be a political actor. So ICAD, uh, over the last 4 or 5 years, has joined with a number of our Palestinian comrades, and we founded together an organization called the One Democratic State Campaign. You can see our website and our political program on onestatecampaign.org. Uh, and the One Democratic State Campaign, which is led, of course, by Palestinians, but supported by a large number of critical anti colonial Israelis like me, has really, I think, made a tremendous contribution to the process of beginning to formulate a political program. And that is over the years we've thought through. It's a two phased process. This process of liberation. One is decolonization, decolonizing Palestine, decolonizing Zionism, dismantling all the colonial structures of control and domination that Israel has established. But once we've created that level playing field, then what replaces it? And of course, the only way forward that we can see is the establishment of one democratic state between the river and the sea that replaces Israel and its occupation. Everyone living in this country stays in this country and becomes a citizen of this country. And refugees, of course, Palestinian refugees have the right to return and will be encouraged to return. Um, but that is the only way in which we can actually move forward into a post colonial situation of equality, inclusiveness, right? And peace and security and justice. So, what I like to do is just take a few minutes today. I mean, I'm trying to make these talks short, within 10 minutes. I usually don't succeed, but I try to do that. Um, um, so let me try to. I got this phone call in the middle. Sorry about that. Let me just try to lay out the basic elements of the One Democratic State program that we in the One Democratic State campaign have formulated in discussions over the last numbers of years. It's a complicated venture. not only decolonizing, but building something new, something just, and something that addresses all the grievances and all the needs that have emerged over the last more than a century. So it's not an easy process. What I want to do today is lay out some of the 4 or 5. We have a 10-point political program, 4 or 5 of the major elements of our program, and then in subsequent conversations over the next few months, we'll get more into issues that are complex, not agreed upon. But in order to plug you in, I mean, I see you not only as as comrades in the struggle, and everything you're doing from BDS to campaigning to lobbying to educational work is really important, and you have to keep doing it. But you're also comrades in the sense that you have to be a part. This struggle is not going to succeed unless, like the ANC in South Africa, we can mobilize the international grassroots and then affect government policies abroad. So you are real comrades, real partners in this venture. And so it's important to plug you into our thinking and the complexities and where we see ourselves going. So that's the spirit in which I'm trying to lay these things out. So let me just again lay out maybe 4 or 5 of the basic elements of this one democratic state conception that we've developed. First of all, the state would be one democratic state between the Mediterranean and the Jordan River. One state, one parliament, one citizenship, one set of laws, everyone living here, everyone living in the country, and the refugees coming back are equal citizens with equal access to the resources of the country, to the lands of the country, the economy. We work together, we live together, we participate in the same political process. One democratic country, period. It's something like what you know in Western Europe or in the United States and Canada and other places, but something that really is kind of new and revolutionary in our part of the world. Uh, Not a confederation, not a federation, not any kind of variation of the two-state solution that really has a hidden agenda of keeping somehow a Jewish state and Jewish superiority intact, but in fact to decolonize completely and then to replace Israel and its occupation with a democratic state of all its citizens. Like I said, in this concept, of course, the refugees return to the country. And the revolutionary part of our program is this idea of citizenship. You know, it's not like we have today, who you are in terms of your religion or your national origin, whether you're Jewish or Palestinian or Muslim or Israeli or whatever, that determines your status in society, but rather citizenship, that has to do simply with your civil status in society. So that refugees don't only have the right to return, but refugees have already a civil status. They're already our citizens. The fact that they were driven out of the country in 1948 in the Nakba, or again in 1967 the Naksa, doesn't mean that they lost their civil status. And so our conception of citizenship allows them to reclaim that civil status that they never lost. So, in a way, they have a double right to return. In this country, of course, like in other democracies, individual rights are protected, no discrimination on any basis. But at the same time, and here's where we really get into the complications that we'll talk about in future conversations. At the same time, this isn't Kansas. We're not just a bunch of individual citizens running around. There are two national groups in this country: Palestinian Arabs and Israeli Jews. Part of the complication, of course, is that neither recognizes the other as a national group. Israelis have never recognized Palestinians as a national group. That's why we call them Arabs and deny them any kind of self determination. But it works the other way too. Palestinians say, look, Zionism was a colonial enterprise. Why should we legitimize it? Why should we recognize Israelis as a national group? They can stay here as citizens, but only as a religious or ethnic minority, not as a national entity like the Palestinians are. But in fact, and this is going to be a hard thing to sell to Palestinians. In fact, an Israeli national identity has developed over the last 70 some years, and it's not something that can be suppressed or ignored or denied. Just like you can't deny Palestinian national existence, and therefore the idea of protecting the collective rights of everyone, your right to your identity, and to define yourself, self-determination, define yourself in terms that you want to want to define yourself in is very important. Now this sets up, and we'll talk about this again later on more in detail, a really difficult dynamic because the essence of because the way this is going to work is if we can invent a new country, a new civil state. That's what the one state is. The one state's not a Palestinian state. It's certainly not an Israeli state. It's a new state. It's a shared state. You see? It's a civil state. It has to have a new name. We might call it Palestine. We might call it Canaan. We might find another name, but we have to invent a new country and give it sovereignty and give it civil institutions like its parliament or like its schools or like its laws real authority to govern the society. That has to be agreed upon by everyone. The problem is that national groups don't do that. National groups want hegemony. The Palestinian national aspiration has always been that this is Palestine. For Palestinians, I would say more than 90% of the Palestinians today would simply say liberation means liberation. We take over Palestine again, it becomes a Palestinian country again, it's Palestine. Now, it's true that Israeli Jews can remain in the country, not as a national group, again, but they can remain as individual citizens, uh, but the country is Palestine. Well, the problem with that is there's a contradiction between between the idea, just like contradiction between Israel is a Jewish democracy. Well, if we do a colonial reversal and we say Palestine is a Palestinian democracy, we're getting into that same kind of problem. What we have to do if we want to live together is to empower a neutral civil identity as our common political and social framework, and then within that create space for Palestinian national identity, for Israeli national identity to be expressed, but we have to prevent them from trying to challenge the sovereignty of the state itself or the ability to fight with each other. So it's a very difficult dynamic. We'll talk about it later. But the last point I want to make is this: the civil state, then, if we're all living together and we're working together and we're studying together and so on, and we're in the same political system, we're working in the same high tech offices and so on, um, should be able to give rise to a new civil society, a new us. We're all, now it depends what the country's called. We're all Palestinians. We're all Canaanites. We're all, I don't know what. That doesn't exist today. So we have to create that common civic identity, and then we have to allow it to emerge. Because only if there's a strong civic identity that's stronger than the different national, it doesn't neutralize the national identities by any means, but is able to control them, only then will be able to create a political structure in which we can really all live together, one that reconciles the national rights and the national identities of both peoples, but nevertheless provides a common framework in which we can all live together in peace and equality and justice. It's not absolute justice, but I think it's substantive justice, and that's really important. So I'll leave it at that. Those are kind of the broad outlines of the program, and again, we'll discuss in future meetings more of the details. So thanks for listening to us and to me, and see you in October. Bye.